Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really universal human experience, grief and loss.
hmm
We've really immersed ourselves in the insights from Self-Sensei to pull out the most crucial knowledge on, navigating these difficult times in healthy ways.
Yeah, and it's so important to understand right off the bat that grief isn't just about like the death of someone close.
Right.
Their sources really highlight that it's a natural response to a huge range of losses. Could be the end of a relationship, losing a job, big health changes.
Even shattered dreams, yeah.
Exactly, even when those deeply held dreams just fall apart.
Absolutely. And that's kind of our mission here today. We want to cut through some of the complexity,
Mm.
understand what grief really is, how it shows up, and importantly, what practical healthy strategies can actually help us heal and, build resilience.
hmm
So we'll start by defining grief, looking at the different kinds of loss. Then we'll maybe explore some psychological models, frameworks for the journey.
Yeah, this can be helpful.
Then to do coping mechanisms, different grief experiences, and finally, what factors shape how each of us goes through it. Okay, so let's unpack this. What is grief, really, beyond just feeling sad?
Well, at its core, grief is that natural anguish that comes after a significant loss. It's definitely more than just sadness.
Okay.
It involves actual physiological distress, a really painful sense of separation, maybe confusion, intense yearning.
Like a longing.
Yeah, longing, dwelling on the past, and often feeling pretty anxious about the future. And what's really striking is how profoundly grief can hit us.
How so?
Well, intense grief can even have, life-threatening aspects. It can weaken your immune system,
Wow.
lead to self-neglect, and tragically, sometimes even contribute to suicidal thoughts.
That really underscores the power of it. And the source makes a point of distinguishing between grief, bereavement, and mourning. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure, so bereavement, that's really the overall period of adjusting to the loss. It's the state of having experienced that loss.
Okay, the state itself.
Right. Then mourning, that's how we outwardly express our grief. It's the public display, often shaped by culture, social norms, religion.
How you show it.
Exactly. But grief itself, that's the internal feeling, the personal inner experience of loss.
Ah, I see.
So understanding that, you can see how someone might be intensely grieving inside, but maybe not mourning in ways others expect. And that's okay.
That's such a key insight. Helps avoid judgment, right? Ourselves or others.
Precisely. Cultural norms can really shape mourning, but the internal grief is deeply private. And the important thing our source highlights is framing grief as a natural response.
Not a disorder.
Not inherently, no, not unless it becomes, complicated and prolonged. Thinking of it as a response helps reduce stigma, lets us be kinder to ourselves and others.
That normalization is so important. Now, you mentioned the wide range of losses. It's definitely not just death, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. Grief is a response to just a huge array of significant life changes and endings.
Like what else?
Well, think about losing a pet. For many people, that's a profound loss, but it's often kind of minimized by society, right? That's disenfranchised grief.
Right, I see.
Then there's job loss. That's not just about money. It's losing routine, identity, social ties.
Yeah, your whole structure can change.
Totally. Relationship breakups, too. Grieving the partner, the shared life, the future you thought you had. Even loss of health from chronic illness. Grieving your healthy self.
It's eye-opening, really.
Yeah.
The source lists things like miscarriage, infertility, retirement, financial instability, even failed dreams. What's the common thread?
The core connection seems to be what the source calls a disruption to our assumptive world.
Assumptive world.
Yeah, those basic beliefs we have about ourselves, about others, about how life is supposed to work. Whether it's a tangible loss, like a person, or intangible, like a dream, it shatters that framework. It's a massive shift in how you understand reality.
So that explains why different types of loss can feel so similarly painful.
Exactly. And as we mentioned, many of these non-death losses are really susceptible to being disenfranchised, not seen as real grief by others.
And it goes deeper, too, doesn't it? Affects our sense of self.
Oh, absolutely. Loss in almost any significant form often makes us reevaluate who we are. Your professional identity after a job loss, your relational identity after a breakup.
Right.
This theme of identity loss and needing to kind of reconstruct who you are, that's a really crucial part of grieving.
Okay, so we're getting a clearer picture of what grief is and the many things that trigger it. But what does it actually feel like? What are some common reactions?
Well, grief is truly holistic. It hits us emotionally, physically, cognitively, behaviorally, the whole spectrum.
Right.
And it varies hugely. Intensity, duration, very individual. Emotionally, yeah, it's often described as a roller coaster.
Amazing.
You might feel deep sadness, loneliness, intense yearning, but also anger, maybe guilt, anxiety about the future.
Even relief sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes relief, especially if it was a difficult relationship or after a long illness. It's complex.
An emotional roller coaster, definitely. And the physical side sounds really significant, too.
It really is. Grief can show up physically in very concrete ways, like hollowness in the stomach, tightness in your chest or throat,
Yeah, I've heard people describe that.
sensitivity to noise, feeling breathless, muscle weakness, just overwhelming fatigue, changes in sleep, appetite, a weaker immune system.
Wow, even measurable changes.
Yes, measurable changes in immune and cardiovascular function. It really shows how linked our minds and bodies are.
It's not just feelings and body stuff. It affects our thinking, too, right? That cognitive fog.
Absolutely. Cognitively, grief often brings disbelief, confusion, real trouble concentrating or remembering things.
Indecisiveness, too.
Yes, indecisiveness, and often being really preoccupied with the loss, thinking about the person or situation constantly.
Okay.
And interestingly, the source normalizes things like sensing the presence of the person you lost, or even brief visual or auditory hallucinations.
That's really validating. Those experiences can feel quite strange, but hearing they're sort of normal within grief helps. And behaviorally, what might we see?
Behaviorally, you might see changes in sleep and appetite again, maybe withdrawing socially, losing interest in things you used to enjoy.
Avoiding reminders?
Yeah, avoiding reminders is common. Or sometimes the opposite, constantly searching for the person, looking through belongings, dreaming about them frequently, sighing, crying, restlessness, or complete lethargy.
And those grief bursts.
Ah, yes, grief bursts or pangs. Those sudden, intense waves of distress, often triggered by a reminder, even long after the loss happened.
Like an ambush.
Exactly. Just when you think things are calm, a wave hits. It's normal, part of the process.
Understanding those bursts is so important. It's easy to feel like you're going backwards, but it sounds like they're just part of it.
Yeah.
Now, with all these overlapping symptoms, how do we tell the difference between grief and, say, clinical depression?
That's a really crucial distinction. They share symptoms for sure, but the nature of the painful feelings often differs.
How so?
In grief, the pain often comes in waves, or pangs, right? And importantly, these can be mixed with positive memories, moments of warmth.
Okay.
With depression, the low mood and lack of pleasure and hedonia tend to be more pervasive, constant, most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks.
And self-esteem.
Generally maintained in grief, though you might feel specific guilt about the loss. Depression often brings feelings of worthlessness, self-loathing.
What about the focus of the sadness?
In grief, it's usually tied directly to the absence of what's lost. In depression, it's often more generalized. And the capacity for positive emotion, especially recalling good memories of the deceased, that tends to remain more accessible in grief.
Got it. And thoughts of death.
In grief, they might center on wanting to join the deceased. In depression, it's more often about ending one's own life due to hopelessness or pain.
So while someone grieving can develop major depression, they're not the same thing. Those positive memories and the wave-like pain seem key.
Exactly. It's about understanding these nuances for getting the right support.
Misdiagnosis could be harmful either way.
Precisely. Our source actually has a helpful comparison table looking at normal grief, prolonged grief disorder, which we'll get to, and major depression. It highlights differences in dominant feelings, self-esteem, pleasure capacity, focus of thoughts. Really useful for clarity.
Okay, great. So we understand grief better now. Let's move on to those psychological models that can help frame the journey. The 5 stages from Kubler-Ross often come up first.
They do. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance to be a day. Introduced in On Death and Dying, initially about terminal illness, later applied more broadly to grief.
But the key thing is, they're not strictly linear.
Right, exactly. That's the crucial point the source emphasizes. Not linear. Not everyone experiences all of them, or in that order.
That's so important. That linear idea creates so much pressure, makes you feel like you're grieving wrong.
Totally. Kubler-Ross and Kessler themselves later clarified they're more like tools to identify feelings, not rigid steps you must take.
So you might skip some, revisit them.
Yeah, or experience them differently. Their popularity probably comes from our need for some order when emotions feel so chaotic.
So a useful starting point maybe, but not a strict map.
Definitely not a map. The danger is using it like a checklist, judging yourself, feeling pressured to move on. It's better seen as a description of some common grief experiences.
Makes sense. Now, Worden's tasks of mourning, That sounds more active.
Yes, Worden sees mourning as an active process, not passive stages. He outlines 4 tasks.
What are they?
Task 1, accept the reality of the loss intellectually and emotionally. Task 2, process the pain of grief, really feel and work through the emotions, not avoid them. He calls it pain work.
Pain work. Ooh.
At task 3, adjust to a world without the deceased. This is multifaceted spiritual adjustments in your beliefs.
That sounds huge.
It is. And task 4, find an enduring connection with the deceased while embarking on a new life. Kind of relocating them in your emotional life, keeping a connection through memory or values while reinvesting in new things.
I like that focus on the griever being active. It feels more empowering, gives you some agency.
Exactly. It fosters a sense of control and hope. And task 3 really captures how loss impacts practical life, identity, beliefs. It's holistic.
Okay, and the third model, the dual process model.
Right, Strobe and Schitt. This one suggests healthy coping involves a dynamic oscillation, a back and forth between 2 orientations.
2 orientations.
Loss-oriented coping and restoration-oriented coping.
Okay, what's the difference?
Loss-oriented is focusing on the loss itself, the pain, the yearning, processing the void. Restoration-oriented is focusing on the secondary stuff, the life changes, new roles, new skills, distractions, adapting.
So it's like sometimes you focus on the grief, sometimes you focus on rebuilding life.
Precisely. Healthy grieving in this model means flexibly moving between the 2. It validates needing time off from intense grief.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, it normalizes engaging in distracting or future-focused activities as healthy adaptation, not just avoidance. It can really lessen guilt about not grieving 24/7.
That makes so much sense. Life does keep going with other demands. This acknowledges that juggle.
Exactly. It helps you feel less overwhelmed. These models aren't mutually exclusive. They just offer different, valuable lenses on this really complex experience.
Understanding them gives you a richer toolkit, maybe.
I think so. A better framework for your own journey.
Okay, so we have these frameworks. Now let's get practical. Healthy ways to actually cope. It's an active process, right? Managing emotions, adapting.
Absolutely. And a really fundamental starting point is just allowing yourself to feel.
Permission to feel.
Yes, permission to feel the whole spectrum, sadness, anger, guilt, whatever comes up without judging it or trying to push it down.
Which is hard when society tells you to be strong.
So hard. But stifling emotions usually just delays or complicates things. All feelings during grief are valid, period.
So how do you allow them?
Finding healthy ways to express them. Tears, talking to someone trusted, writing. Journaling can be huge.
Just getting it out.
Yeah. Naming it, expressing it, somehow makes it feel more manageable.
And connection seems vital too. Grief feels so isolating.
It can be incredibly isolating, but you don't have to go through it alone. Reaching out, friends, family, support groups provides relief, comfort, validation.
Knowing you're not the only one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Counters that urge to withdraw. But the quality of support matters more than quantity.
Right. Not just anyone, but people who actually listen and validate.
Yes. Prioritize people who are supportive and validating. Minimize contact with those who aren't, if you can. And over time, maybe shifting towards reciprocity, supporting others. That can be part of your own restoration, too.
And self-care. It sounds essential, not like a luxury.
Absolutely essential. Grief takes a massive toll, physically and mentally. Self-care is a necessity.
What does that look like in practice?
Physical stuff. Trying for adequate sleep, decent nutrition, staying hydrated, gentle movement like walking or yoga, maybe time in nature.
Okay.
And mental emotional care. Mindfulness, relaxation techniques, meditation, deep breathing, calming music, journaling, setting boundaries, saying no when you need to.
Allowing moments of joy, too. That sounds tricky.
It can be, but it's important. Joy can coexist with grief. It's not a betrayal. And crucially, avoiding unhealthy coping mechanisms like excessive alcohol or drugs. Self-care builds that foundation for healing.
The source also talks about honoring memories through rituals. That sounds powerful.
It really is. Rituals offer a tangible way to honor the loss, maintain connection, cope meaningfully. It aligns with Worden's 4th task, that enduring connection.
What kind of rituals?
Could be anything meaningful to you. A memory box, lighting a candle regularly, celebrating birthdays or anniversaries in a special way, planting a tree, visiting significant places, donating to a cause.
Give some structure, too.
Yes. Structure and a sense of control when things feel chaotic. It creates a dedicated space for remembrance, helps redefine the relationship from physical presence to memory and legacy, and rituals can change over time.
And when routines are shattered, Creating new ones can be grounding.
Incredibly grounding. Loss disrupts everything. Reestablishing daily routines, even small ones, provides stability and purpose.
Like just making the bed.
Exactly. Making the bed, regular meals, small scheduled tasks, exercise, hobbies, planned rest. A consistent bedtime routine helps too.
Combats that feeling of being adrift.
Precisely. It's external structure supporting you when internal drive is low. Think structure as support, not busyness as avoidance. It's practical, restoration-oriented coping.
What about creative outlets? For emotions that are hard to verbalize.
Oh, hugely valuable. Journaling, art, music, they can be profound outlets. They help process feelings that words can't quite capture.
Externalizing the grief.
Yes, making it more manageable, bringing clarity, release, understanding. Journaling with specific prompts can be great how you feel right now. Focusing on the loss, using metaphors for grief, exploring unspoken aspects, changes in yourself.
Goes deeper than just talking sometimes.
It can. Bypasses limitations, allows nuanced processing, facilitates self-reflection, making sense of it, integrating it into your life story.
And then there's the practical stuff. Life goes on, problems arise. Problem solving is part of coping too.
Absolutely. Loss often brings practical challenges. Actively tackling them reduces secondary stress, builds competence.
Like with job loss.
Yeah, taking time to adjust, but also managing finances, updating the resume, networking, making a job search plan, active steps.
Or chronic illness.
Learning self-management strategies, maybe channeling anger into advocacy. Addressing these practical things frees up energy for the emotional work. It's restoration-oriented coping again, building self-efficacy.
Okay, last one here in coping. Emotional regulation. Important to feel things, but sometimes it's overwhelming.
Exactly. It's balancing allowing feelings with managing them when they're too intense. Not suppression, but modulation.
How do you do that?
Techniques like mindfulness, being present without judgment, cognitive reappraisal, reframing thoughts to change emotional impact, taking a break, stepping away briefly, breathing techniques to calm the nervous system, constructive expression, calm, assertive, self-soothing activities.
Finding what works for you.
Yes. Tools to navigate the turbulence. Finding that middle ground between being overwhelmed and shutting down, these skills become lasting assets.
That's a really comprehensive toolkit. So many healthy ways to approach this.
And it highlights that holistic approach. Emotional, physical, social, cognitive, behavioral, spiritual, all interconnected.
Now, let's shift to understanding different types of grief experiences. Because it's not all the same, is it?
Not at all. Different circumstances bring unique challenges. Anticipatory grief is one example.
Grieving before the loss happens.
Exactly, like with a terminal illness or a progressive condition, experienced by the ill person, family, caregivers.
What are they grieving?
The future that won't happen. Shared experiences missed, declining abilities, relationship changes. It can involve ambiguous loss, too. Person isn't there physically, but maybe not psychologically.
That sounds incredibly difficult
Yeah.
and confusing. Maybe feeling guilty for grieving someone still alive.
Very common feelings. Guilt, shame, confusion. It's crucial to validate those feelings. And interestingly, it doesn't necessarily make post-death grief easier. Sometimes it intensifies it, especially for caregivers.
What helps with anticipatory grief?
Acknowledging feelings, open communication, journaling, self-care, seeking support, focusing on the present, making the most of time left. Recognizing the dual burden of caregiving and ambiguous loss is key.
Then there's complicating grief, now often called prolonged grief disorder, or PGD, when grief just gets stuck.
Yes. For some, grief stays intensely debilitating long-term, really impairing function. PGD is diagnosed when symptoms persist over a year for adults, 6 months for kids' teens, causing significant distress.
It's more than just deep sadness.
Much more, a feeling of being stuck. Key features include persistent yearning, preoccupation with the deceased circumstances, identity disruption, part of me died, disbelief, avoidance, intense emotional pain, anger, bitterness, difficulty reintegrating into life, numbness, life feeling meaningless, intense loneliness.
Physical symptoms, too.
Often, yes. Insomnia, stress, appetite loss, declining health.
Are there risk factors?
Yes. Unexpected traumatic death, suicide accident, loss of a child spouse, close dependent relationship, prior trauma loss, pre-existing mental health issues. It's like the natural adaptation process gets impeded.
Having it formally recognized in the DSM sounds important.
Hugely. Validates the suffering, reduces stigma, facilitates treatment access, Targeted psychotherapy like complicated grief treatment, CGT, helps with acceptance, managing emotions, adapting, re-engaging. Professional assessment is vital if PGD is suspected.
And disenfranchised grief.
Right.
Touched on this. When your loss isn't acknowledged.
Right. Grief that can't be openly acknowledged, publicly mourned, or socially supported. Lack of validation leads to isolation. Feeling your sorrow is illegitimate.
What kind of losses often get disenfranchised?
So many. Unrecognized relationships, ex-partner, secret lover, same-sex partner in non-affirming settings, online friend, stigmatized losses, suicide, overdose, AIDS, miscarriage, stillbirth, abortion, loss of a pet often minimized, non-death losses, job, finances, health, infertility, failed dream, unrecognized grievers, young kids, elderly with dementia, those with disabilities, even less significant losses like a colleague or public figure.
That lack of validation must be like a second wound.
It really is. It hinders the natural process. You internalize the message, your feelings are wrong, leading to doubt, guilt, difficulty coping.
How do you cope with that?
Self-validation is key. Acknowledge your own feelings. Seek supportive niches, online forums, specific groups. Create personal rituals. Therapy can help. Maybe educate others if you feel safe doing so. Any loss not seen can lead to this.
And the source also mentions coping with specific types of loss, like job loss or breakups.
Yes, tailoring the approach helps. Job loss grief involves loss of income, routine, identity, purpose. Coping involves acknowledging the grief, managing stress, seeking support, networking, self-care, practical steps, finances, job search. Proactive coping is essential.
And relationship breakups.
Grieving the partner, shared life, future, identity. Coping involves allowing all feelings, even conflicting ones, leaning on support, comprehensive self-care, calming activities, boundaries, routines, focusing forward, managing digital connections, limit seeing the ex online, and eventually learning from the experience.
Chronic illness and health loss.
That's ongoing grief for the former self, abilities, future. Cyclical grief often. Coping involves naming losses, calming practices, proactive self-management, reframing guilt, balancing acceptance and fighting spirit, maintaining structure, connecting with others, support group.
Finding purpose within limitations.
Exactly. Balancing acceptance and purpose is key there. Recognizing these specific challenges allows for more tailored self-compassion and support.
Okay, let's talk about the factors that shape our individual grief journey. It's clearly so unique to each person.
Incredibly unique, shaped by personal factors, the nature of the loss, culture, support. Understanding this fosters self-compassion and empathy.
What kind of personal factors make a difference?
Things like personality dependency or low self-esteem might complicate grief, while resilience can buffer it. Age affects understanding and resources. Gender can influence coping styles and support seeking due to societal norms.
Past experiences matter too, right?
Definitely. Unresolved past grief can compound things. Successfully navigated past losses can build resilience. Mental health history is also a factor. Pre-existing conditions increase vulnerability. Your coping skills repertoire makes a difference. And of course, the relationship itself, its nature, depth, complexity.
It's a mix of everything.
Yes, these factors interact. It's not about self-blame, but appreciating the complexity. It can also show where to focus efforts, like building skills or connections.
In culture and spirituality, they must play a huge role.
Huge. They provide lenses for interpreting loss, meaning, rituals, expectations. Culture dictates expression norms, practices, duration roles. Collective versus individual mourning, specific rituals, acceptable emotional displays. It can be supportive or create conflict if too rigid.
And spirituality.
Can offer comfort, meaning, frameworks for death afterlife, practices like prayer. Beliefs about afterlife can be solace or trigger a faith crisis. Research is mixed. It can strengthen faith or challenge it.
And finally, social support. We keep coming back to that.
Because it's critical. A buffer against stress. Provides psychological, physical, practical, even financial help. Interestingly, the perception of support is as important as the actual support received.
But grief can strain those networks.
It can. Others might feel awkward, withdraw. The grieving person might pull back. Sometimes there's a misguided belief the person needs space. Highlights the need for education for everyone involved.
Okay, let's bust some common myths about grief. These cause so much unnecessary pain.
They really do. Placing burdens, guilt, unrealistic expectations. Myth 1, grief equals mourning. Truth. Internal experience versus external expression.
Myth 2, those neat, orderly stages.
Truth. Individual, messy, not linear at all. Myth 3, be strong, don't cry. Truth. Natural response, suppression is unhelpful.
Myth 4, Grieve alone, don't burden others.
Truth. Connection is beneficial. Myth 5. Grief is only sadness. Truth. Wide range of emotions. Anger, guilt, anxiety.
Myth 6, get over grief in a year.
Truth. Not about getting over, it's integration. No set timeline. Myth 7. Resolved grief never comes back. Truth. Grief bursts are normal.
Myth 8, staying busy is best.
Truth. Avoidance doesn't heal. Balance is needed. Myth 9. Grief is only for major losses like death, divorce. Truth. Any significant loss can cause grief.
Which ties into disenfranchised grief again.
Exactly. And myth 10. Grief is the same for all losses. Truth. Unique to the loss and relationship.
Where do these myths come from?
Often from societal discomfort with death and intense emotions. They lead to shame, inadequacy, feeling misunderstood. Debunking them allows authentic grieving and more supportive communities.
Now, some special considerations. Supporting grieving children and teens, their experience is different.
Very different due to development. Understanding of death evolves. Use honest, clear language. Died, not euphemisms. Address common worries directly. Did I cause it? Will I die? Who will care for me?
And how they express grief might look different.
Yes, often behavioral, through play, reenactment, regression, changes in patterns, acting out, withdrawal, concentration issues, easily misinterpreted.
So how do we support them?
Honest, repeated communication. Include them in rituals. Explain first. Maintain routines. Offer comfort, presence. Help label feelings. Use creative play approaches like memory boxes. And how adults manage their grief impacts kids hugely. Honest, age-appropriate info is key to avoid scary interpretations or self-blame. Poorly managed childhood grief has long-term risks.
And understanding grief in men, considering masculine norms.
Right. Norms like stoicism, control, avoiding vulnerability shape expression. Often see instrumental action-oriented coping. Physical activity, work, problem-solving, private rituals. Maybe silence, isolation, focus on physical symptoms, avoidance. Anger, masking vulnerability.
Risk of misunderstanding them.
Big risk. They might not get needed support, seen as disinterested. It's a different style, not necessarily unhealthy unless it becomes denial or harmful isolation. Support involves validating instrumental grieving, offering safe spaces, no pressure, looking beneath the surface, encouraging healthy balance. Instrumental grieving isn't lack of grief. Men can be prone to disenfranchised grief too.
And rebuilding identity after major loss. That identity crisis you mentioned.
Yes. Mourning the loss of self alongside the external loss impacts relational, professional, spiritual, financial, physical identity, worldview. It's about accepting you're different, not going back.
How do you rebuild?
Process involves grieving the former self. Journaling helps. Imagining a new future self. Reflecting on shifts, losses, and gains post-traumatic growth. Integrating the past meaningfully. Values, connection. It parallels Warden's Task 3 and the dual process model's restoration focus. Requires active engagement, introspection. Potential gains contribute to resilience.
And the impact of stigma. It complicates everything.
Adds suffering, silences grief, societal stigma around certain losses. Suicide, overdose, miscarriage leads to judgment, blame, isolation, guilt. Workplace norms often lack support. Pressure, quick return. Social media is double-edged. Support versus performative grief, constant reminders, even stigma around seeking therapy. Weakness.
Stigma leads to hiding pain.
Which leads to unprocessed emotions, worse outcomes. Challenging stigma is vital.
Finally, when and how to seek professional help. Sometimes it's just too much.
Absolutely. Knowing when grief is overwhelming, prolonged, complicated, and what support exists is crucial.
What are the signs it's time?
If grief is consistently debilitating, impairing function. If symptoms worsen over time, concerns about PGD, depression, suicidal thoughts, specific indicators. Intense symptoms lasting 1+ year, adults, 6+ months, kids. Significant impairment, difficulty accepting loss, numbness, intense avoidance, suicidal thought, self-harm, other mental health issues developing, or if others express concern. Reaching out is a positive step.
What kind of professional support is out there?
Individual grief counseling therapy, safe space, coping skills, work through tasks, CBT, CGT, grief support groups, shared healing, validation, general or specific loss types, family therapy if the system is impacted, psychiatric consultation for severe symptoms, co-occurring conditions, medication options.
How do you find help?
GP referrals. National health systems, direct access, helplines, online resources, national bereavement helplines, CRUISE 988 in U.S., specialized loss helplines, Suicide, pregnancy loss, veterans, mental health helplines, SAM-HSA, NAMI, online directories for groups, grief organization websites, Dougie Center, Hospice Foundation. Finding a good fit is important. Okay to ask questions.
It's good to know those resources are there.
It is. Reaching out is strength, a step towards healing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's so clear that grief is just intrinsically human. It reflects how much we care, how significant our connections are. It's such a personal journey shaped by so many things. No single right way, no fixed timeline.
Absolutely.
Understanding all its facets, emotional, physical, cognitive, behavioral, validates our own experience. The models are guides, not rules,
Useful frameworks.
and healthy coping. It's about self-compassion, active engagement feeling, connecting, self-care, honoring memories, routines, creativity, problem-solving, regulating emotions,
All those pieces.
recognizing the different types of grief, anticipatory, PGD, disenfranchised, and the specifics of different losses helps build empathy. Knowing the influencing factors, personal, cultural, stigma, empowers us. The pain might lessen, but it's more about integration, finding new meaning, and help is there if you need it.
And I think what's really profound is that grief isn't about getting over it. It's about learning to live with the loss.
Yeah.
Carrying the love, the lessons forward, shaping a new, resilient, meaningful existence. It's a journey of courage, patience, and embracing all of it.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into grief and loss.
Thank you.
Until our next exploration together.